is continue for the next 2 years at the same pace the savings we've made over the last 5 years, and people can see how that has restored stability to our country. The alternative of that Miliband SNP government would be deeply unstable. It would borrow tens of billions of pounds more, and that would lead to higher mortgage rates, to lost jobs, to lost incomes in our country. We don't want to go back to square one. Our country is making progress. Let's stick with the future. Let's stick with the plan that's working. Let's not go back to the economic chaos of the past. Who's got another question? Hands up. Gentleman there, sir.
A lot's been said about the influence the SNP potentially have on the Labour Party, but nothing has been said about the potential influence that Len McCluskey and Unite might have on their policy. And Len McCluskey seems to have gone on his holidays. We never heard anything about him at all. Do you have any comments on how that might affect Labour policy?
Well, look, it's very clear that in this election, the Labour candidates have been put up by the trade unions and funded by the trade unions. And when you've had in Labour candidate selections someone who's not supported by the trade unions, they lose out to the Unite candidate more often than not. And there's a consequence, which is they would be doing the unions' bidding, and the agenda for the next government, this Ed Miliband SNP government, would be profoundly anti-business, and there's a consequence to that. The consequence is lost jobs. And one of the observations I made here is that, again, international investors, people who make decisions about where to put their investment, big companies like this, of course, who can move anywhere, they look at the British economy, and I think some of them, when they see an anti-business culture growing in our country, will not make that extra investment, not create that extra job, and the sentiment would turn very sour. And the people, again, who would pay would be the poorest in our country, the people who would lose their jobs, the people who would see their incomes cut. So that is another of the clear choices facing our country in just a couple of weeks' time. Who's got another question? Lady there.
Thank you very much. I think at the core of this election, just going to the ordinary people who may well have not made up their minds, there is trust for your economic leadership, but there is real worry, to go back to the first question, about the cuts and about the non-protected departments. How do we square not bequeathing debt to our sons and our grandchildren with caring for the elderly and giving the young people hope?
Well, in the end, the best thing you can do for the people living in the country is provide a secure economy. Because when you have economic insecurity, it's the young people who can't get the jobs and their futures are snatched from them. And it's the people who rely on the public services who see those public services unable to be supported by a government that's run out of money. And so the best thing you can do to fund great public services, invest in our National Health Service, create jobs for young people and opportunities for young people, is to have an economic plan that works. And we have that plan in the United Kingdom. It's a plan that's created a record number of jobs. It's an economy now growing faster than any of the other major advanced economies in the world in the last year, and set to grow faster in the future. So if we carry on with that plan, we can go on delivering that economic security, that jobs and that investment. Let me take another question. Gentleman there, just second row.
Thank you. I just wish to make a point, commend you for the way you've turned the economy around, but also commend the work Francis Maud has been doing in cutting costs. I believe if the country at all levels, national and devolved levels, were getting value for money in what they paid rather than paying the vastly inflated prices they all too often do, I honestly believe we would be saving 7% of several percent of gross domestic product. I believe it is those figures. If we keep cutting funding and cutting services without getting value for money, we could see a situation in future where people start thinking, actually, what's so bad about public ownership of these things? It can't be as bad as it is now, can it?
Well, that would, you're absolutely right that you've got to go on getting value for money for the taxpayer. I do this job aware of my heavy responsibility to spend the money that is raised in taxes from working people well and get the best value for money. And the initiatives we've run to make sure that supplies to government are bought at a more effective cost, to make sure we're not wasting money in government departments that duplicate each other's functions. That work has been one of the great silent success stories of the government. And of course, as a result, while we've been making savings over the last 5 years, you've seen more people treated in our hospitals, you've seen more kids in outstanding schools, you've seen crime coming down. So we've been able to deliver this because we've taken the care and the trouble to make sure the money is effectively spent and we get real value for money, and we absolutely need to continue doing that. Let me take 2 more questions at the back there.
Claire Ashworth, ITN. Just to pick up on the very real concerns of many of the voters on personal finances, on economics, can you tell us specifically where you will cut spending and where you will raise taxes in order to meet your economic plans?
Well, we have been very clear. We have a balanced plan that we need to go on saving £1 in every £100 that the government spends. And that is what we've done over the last 5 years. And we've been able to invest more in the National Health Service as a result. And we've been able to boost the pay of working people by cutting their income taxes. We want to go on doing that. We need 2 more years of savings. And that is delivering the economic security and the jobs we see in this country. All of that would be put at risk if, as the IFS confirmed today, you would have £90 billion more borrowing from Ed Miliband and the Scottish nationalists. That would lead to more economic insecurity. That would leave Britain exposed to whatever happens in the world. Mortgage rates would go up, jobs would be lost, incomes would be cut. And then, of course, you wouldn't be able to fund your public services. So there's such a clear choice now in this election. Do we stick with a plan that is working and delivering the jobs, or do we go back to the economic chaos and the lost jobs of the past? And I say let's stick with the Conservative plan that's working. Who's got another question? So on the front row there. That's the final question.
George Grant, parliamentary candidate for Bradford West. What are your thoughts on addressing one of the most acute challenges still facing our economy, the balance of payments deficit? And what are your thoughts on the different choices on offer at this election and how they might impact on this after the 7th of May?
Well, look, we are not coming to this election saying the job is done. We are saying there are still challenges in the British economy, and there's the deficit that remains too high, although we've had this very interesting public finance data this morning, very welcome news, that our deficit is now less than half the level we inherited, and we are borrowing £3 billion less than was even forecast in the budget just a few weeks ago. So the plan is delivering real progress, faster progress than even our independent Office for Budget Responsibility thought possible. So we're dealing with the public finance challenge. Then there's the challenge which you allude to, which is how do we make sure Britain exports more? And this has been a long-standing challenge for the British economy, but actually over recent years, you've seen exports rising to those faster-growing markets in Asia and elsewhere in the world. We're attracting as well real investment from around the world, the lion's share of investment into Europe, and a point I made on the radio this morning, in fact, Chinese investment, for example, into Europe. The UK is getting more investment from the Chinese than France, Germany, and Italy put together, and that's because we're an attractive place to come and do business, to grow a company, to employ people, and to help build our infrastructure. So we've got to go on addressing these challenges on exports, on productivity and the like. That's why we've got our plan to invest in infrastructure here in the north of England, to create that northern powerhouse, a really compelling vision of what the north of England can be. And it's a very simple choice for people in Bradford and elsewhere. Do you want to continue with this plan that is reducing unemployment in Bradford and indeed across West Yorkshire, or do we want to go back to high unemployment, the high tax bills, the lost incomes of the past? We're here in Ed Balls' constituency. People don't need to imagine what it's like if Ed Balls is in the Treasury, because he was in the Treasury. And Britain suffered one of the greatest economic calamities in its modern history. And people paid the price in their lost jobs and their incomes being hit. And we do not want to do that all over again. We've had one letter left by a departing Labour government saying there's no money left. Let's not give them a chance to write another letter like that. Thank you very much.